Before the clash of fire and faith. Before a young man stood alone against an empire. Before history split between power and truth. The three heavenly books already framed this confrontation. The Torah presents Abraham as the breaker of false gods and the challenger of tyrant kings who claimed divine authority. The Bible portrays Abraham as the man who trusted the unseen God and walked away from earthly power toward a promised truth. The Quran introduces Ibrahim as the one who questioned the stars, the moon and the sun, and then stood before a king who claimed he could give life and death. 3 scriptures, 1 confrontation, 1 question that still haunts humanity. Who has the right to rule the human soul? And if you feel drawn to stories where truth stands alone against overwhelming power, where faith confronts arrogance, then stay with this journey till the end. Because this is not just ancient history. This is a mirror. And if at any point this story makes you pause, think or question, remember to stay connected with Son of Adam. Because these are not stories meant to be heard once. They are warnings meant to echo. In the ancient land of Mesopotamia, between the rivers where civilization itself was being shaped, there rose a king whose ambition knew no limits. His name was Nimrod, a hunter by legend, a conqueror by blood, a ruler by fear. Nimrod was not satisfied ruling land alone. He wanted to rule belief. He wanted to own the sky. Temples rose under his command. Statues filled the cities. Gods of stone and fire became tools of control. And the people obeyed, not because they believed, but because fear had replaced faith. Into this world, a child was born, not in a palace, not with an army, but with a question. Ibrahim, from the beginning he was different. While others bowed, he observed. While others repeated rituals, he questioned. Why does the statue not hear? Why does the idol not speak? Why does the sun rise and set without permission? These questions were dangerous, because in Nimrod's kingdom, questions were rebellion. Nimrod claimed something no human before him had dared to claim openly. He declared himself divine. Life and death, he said, were in his hands. The harvest, the rain, victory and defeat, all flowed from his will. And the people accepted it. Because generations raised in fear forget how to doubt. But Ibrahim did not forget. He looked at the stars and said, "This is not my Lord." He looked at the moon and said, "This is not my Lord." He looked at the sun blazing with power and said, "This too sets." And when it disappeared, he said, "I turn my face toward the one who created the heavens and the earth." That single statement was a declaration of war, not with swords, but with ideas. Nimrod ruled through force. Ibrahim stood through conviction. And history was about to witness one of the most profound clashes of worldviews ever recorded. Power versus truth. Fear versus faith. Control versus submission. When Ibrahim began questioning the idols publicly, the priests panicked. Because idols survive only when no one asks why. He challenged them in their own temples. He asked them why they worship what they themselves carve. He asked them why their gods need guards and offerings. The people had no answers. Only anger. And anger is the last refuge of a lie. News reached Nimrod, not of rebellion with weapons, but of rebellion with reason. A young man, breaking certainty, unraveling fear. Nimrod summoned him. Imagine the scene. A vast hall. Torches burning, walls decorated with symbols of domination. A king seated high, a lone man standing below. One believed the world existed for him. The other believed the world belonged to God. Nimrod spoke first. "Who is your Lord?" Ibrahim replied without hesitation. "My Lord is the one who gives life and causes death." The court fell silent. Nimrod smiled. "Because tyrants love moments like this. I too give life and death," he said. And to prove it, he ordered one prisoner released. and another executed. There, he declared, I have given life and caused death. The people gasped. The illusion strengthened, but Ibrahim did not argue emotionally. He did not shout. He did not panic. He shifted the battlefield. My Lord brings the sun from the east. He said, so bring it from the west. Silence. A silence heavier than chains. Because power can kill, but it cannot move the sun. The Quran captures this moment with devastating simplicity. The disbeliever was confounded. Nimrod had no answer. Because truth does not require theatrics. But tyrants cannot tolerate being exposed. From that moment, Ibrahim was no longer a philosopher. He was a threat. The order was given. Burn him, not quietly, but publicly. Make an example, so no one else dares to think. Wood was gathered. Fire was stacked. Flames were prepared large enough to be seen across the city. This was not punishment. This was propaganda. And as Ibrahim was brought toward the fire, the people watched, some with hatred, some with fear, some with doubt quietly growing. And here lies the most dangerous moment for any empire. When a single man walks toward death, without fear, because fearlessness cannot be ruled. The Torah, the Bible, and the Quran all converge on this truth. That God intervened. The fire was commanded to be cool and safe. What was meant to erase Ibrahim, immortalized him, and what was meant to glorify Nimrod, exposed him. But this was not the end of the clash. It was only the beginning. Because the fire did not just burn wood, it burned the illusion that power equals truth. And the question remained, if Nimrod was truly a god, why could he not command the fire? This is where part 1 ends. The stage is set. The fire has failed. The king is exposed. The fire had failed. And when a spectacle meant to terrify instead inspires awe, power begins to fracture. Nimrod did not fall that day. But something inside his empire cracked. Because tyrants survive on one illusion, that resistance is futile. Ibrahim walked out of the flames. Not scorched, not shaken, not silent, and the people saw it. Some whispered, some denied, some convinced themselves it was a trick. But deep down, they knew, if the king were truly divine, the fire would have obeyed him. From that moment onward, Nimrod ruled bodies, but he had lost control of minds. And a ruler who loses belief has already begun to fall. Nimrod's problem was no longer Ibrahim alone. It was the question Ibrahim had unleashed. If idols cannot defend themselves, if fire cannot harm the faithful, if a king cannot command nature, then who truly rules? Empires are not destroyed first by armies. They are destroyed by doubt. So Nimrod changed strategy. He did not kill Ibrahim again, because martyrs are dangerous. Instead, he tried to erase him. He banned discussion. He silenced priests who hesitated. He intensified rituals. More idols. More festivals. More noise. Because noise is how lies survive. But Ibrahim did not fight noise with noise. He chose distance. He left. This was not retreat. This was defiance of a different kind. The Bible describes Abraham leaving his homeland without knowing where he was going. The Torah frames it as a divine command to separate truth from corruption. The Quran captures it as hijrah for the sake of God, leaving power behind, walking toward purpose. And this is something tyrants fear more than rebellion. When people see that you can leave the system, that you do not need its rewards, that you do not crave its approval, the system loses leverage. Nimrod wanted submission. Ibrahim offered independence. But Nimrod was not done. History remembers him not only as a king, but as a builder. Legends speak of a tower, a structure meant to pierce the heavens, a statement carved in stone. that humanity no longer needed God. Whether metaphor or memory, the message was clear: I will reach the sky myself. This was not architecture. This was ideology. The same worldview, different form. I do not submit, I conquer. Yet every tower built on arrogance eventually collapses, because height without humility creates blindness. The scriptures diverge in detail, but converge in meaning. God scattered Nimrod's people, languages fractured, unity dissolved, not by force, but by confusion, because when arrogance reaches its peak, it cannot coordinate truth. Meanwhile, Ibrahim's influence grew without armies, without monuments, without crowns. He built no tower. He built a lineage, not of blood alone, but of belief. Every prophet that followed carried echoes of his stance. One God, one truth, one moral axis, against kings who claimed ownership of destiny. Here lies the real clash of worldviews. Nimrod believed power defines truth. Ibrahim believed truth defines power. Nimrod ruled externally. Ibrahim transformed internally. Nimrod demanded obedience. Ibrahim invited reflection. And this difference explains why one name survives only as a warning, and the other as a foundation. Ask yourself, why do tyrants always fear thinkers? Why do empires criminalize questions? Why does arrogance dress itself as certainty? Because once people realize that authority does not equal legitimacy, everything changes. Ibrahim never overthrew Nimrod, yet Nimrod lost. Because history does not remember who sat on the throne, it remembers who stood alone. And now, look around. Nimrod did not die, he evolved. He appears wherever power demands worship, where systems punish conscience, where truth is treated as rebellion. And Ibrahim still walks among us. In anyone who chooses integrity over comfort, faith over fear, truth over approval. This is not ancient myth. This is a recurring test. Every generation is asked, will you bow to what dominates, or stand for what is right? Time has a brutal way of judging kings, not by how loudly they ruled, but by how long their ideas survive. Nimrod believed eternity could be forced, that power could carve permanence, that fear could freeze history in his image. But time does not obey tyrants. It listens only to truth. After the fire failed, after the people whispered, after Ibrahim walked away without chains, Nimrod remained on his throne. Yet something invisible had shifted. His authority now required effort. Rituals needed enforcement. Faith needed surveillance. Because belief once cracked, never returns the same. The Quran does not give Nimrod a heroic downfall, no dramatic last battle, no glorious end, and that itself is the punishment. He fades, a ruler who claimed divinity, reduced to a footnote. The Torah and Bible echo the same verdict. Kings like Nimrod rise loud, but vanish quietly, because arrogance leaves no legacy, only rubble. Ibrahim, on the other hand, leaves no empire, no palace, no army, yet his worldview reshapes civilization. Think about this. Billions today trace their spiritual lineage to him. Jews, Christians, Muslims. Different paths, same route. One man, one stand, one refusal to bow. This is the power Nimrod never understood. Influence does not come from control. It comes from conviction. Ibrahim's journey continues across deserts, across tests, across generations. He argues not with swords, but with reason. He submits not to kings, but to God. And this submission does something radical. It frees him, free from fear, free from idols, free from needing approval. This is why his story survives. Because every human civilization eventually asks the same question. Who do you submit to? Power or truth? The Bible describes Abraham as the father of faith, not because he was perfect, but because he trusted when logic ended. The Torah presents him as the breaker of false gods, not because he hated people, but because he loved truth. The Quran calls Ibrahim a nation in himself, because one person aligned with truth outweighs an empire built on falsehood. 3 scriptures, 3 perspectives, 1 conclusion. Truth does not need numbers. It needs courage. Now pause. Why do you think this story is repeated across Revelations? Because humanity keeps producing Nimrods. Different titles, different flags, same mindset. I decide what is right. I define reality. I control life. And humanity keeps producing Ibrahims. Different faces, different eras, same refusal. I will not worship power. I will not silence my conscience. I will not bow to fear. This is why this story is dangerous. Because it asks something uncomfortable. Where do you stand? Not in words, but in choices. When truth costs comfort, do you pay? When obedience is easy, and integrity is lonely, which path do you take? Nimrod chose domination. Ibrahim chose submission to God. And history judged them both. If Nimrod were truly victorious, his worldview would dominate today. But it does not, because no one builds their life on Nimrod. No one names their moral compass after him. Yet Ibrahim still shapes prayers, still shapes ethics, still shapes resistance against injustice. This is the final humiliation of tyranny. To be remembered only as the villain in someone else's story. And here is the final warning. If you ever feel powerless, remember, Ibrahim had no army, no wealth, no throne, only certainty, and that was enough. Enough to outlast a king, enough to outlive an empire, enough to echo across millennia. If this story made you think, if it made you uncomfortable, if it made you question power and truth, then this is your reminder. Stay connected with Son of Adam, because these are not bedtime stories. They are survival manuals. And before you leave, if you believe stories like this still matter, if you believe truth deserves a voice, then support this journey, not with noise, but with presence. Like, comment, subscribe, so these warnings continue to reach those still standing before their own Nimrods.